It was a perfect setting. He was on the Mount of Olives, and there is the backdrop of either the Dead Sea or the Mediterranean Sea. Either of those Jesus could have used. And Jesus was not saying that he's giving vent to his servants to say to mountains, go and jump in the lake. Because when God made creation, he made it the way he wanted it to be. He put mountains where he wanted them and seas where he wanted them. So that was not the goal. But when I was in school, and some of you school teachers can help me right here, we learned about a figure of speech called hyperbole. You ever heard that? Hyperbole is the practice of using extreme exaggeration for the sake of making a point. You know about that. That's not new to you. Let me give you some examples. First of all, my mama was good at saying to me, boy, I will slap you into... Yeah, next week. Y'all heard it too. Y'all mama, my mama. And I knew that my mama is very capable of slapping me. And I'm 46 and she's still able. That's why when I say something silly, I stand back. But I never feared that if she slapped me today, I was going to wake up and be thirsty. But I never feared that, not for one moment. But it was hyperbole. She was making an exaggeration in order to make her point. Yeah. You ever told somebody, well, his breath is killing me. Now, you may feel like you wish you was dead, but you won't really die. That's hyperbole, the extreme exaggeration for the purpose of making a point. And when Jesus says, your faith, if you really trust God, you can say to this mountain, jump in the lake and it will happen. What he's saying, you're going to have some mountain-sized problems in your life. You're going to have to deal with some gigantic circumstances in your life. And if you trust God and pray against those things, God will see to it that you get what you ask for. And let me just go ahead and work with this for a minute. This does not mean that I then all of a sudden, thank you, Reverend, I heard you last week, have the power to speak to the mountain and all of a sudden the mountain goes away. Speak to my bills and my bills disappear. Speak to my sickness and my sickness disappear. No, that's foolishness. Yes, sir. I remember going into a hospital room and I was getting ready to pray for a sick patient. And there was this super saint that was in the room with me. He said, hold on a minute. I speak healing. And after they finished all that foolishness, I said, you can speak all you want to. Now I'm getting ready to ask God to heal this person's body. Because I know that God has power to heal. I don't have power to speak it.
Yeah, that's right.
Of course, they make this assertion that if you haven't reached a certain level of spirituality, that you can't speak things. But once you grow up spiritual, you can speak it, and it will happen. Let me tell you something, that's not Bible. Well, yes, it is, because this whole word is in Romans, what? Chapter 4, verse 17. What does it say? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let me flip over there. It says, as it is written, I have made thee a father of many nations. He's talking to Abraham. Then he says, before whom he believed even God. Now, he goes from talking about Abraham to talking about God. And then what happens? He says, who quickeneth the dead and calleth those things which be not as though they were. Wait a minute. Abraham wasn't the one calling things. It was God who he's saying has the power to call things that be not as though they were. But wait a minute. Somebody says, I don't know if I get that, but let me help you get it. Look at that verse one more time. Back up. He says, even God who quickeneth the dead. Now, why'd you leave that part out? Why'd you skip over being able to make the dead come alive and go into speaking things that be not as though they were? How you going to jump over one part, say you can do this part, but forget about the other part? If you can speak things into existence, you ought to be able to go out to the graveyard and speak some life in the dead folk.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what this text says.
Yeah, that's right.
And if you have the power to speak life into death or speak healing into sickness, you are either very, very cold-hearted, selfish, and apathetic, or you lie. Because if you have that power, there are folk in your family that are sick and you ain't spoke healing into them.
Preach.
There are folk in your family that are broke. You got some bills and you ain't spoke back out of existence yet. You are either cold, apathetic, unintelligent, or dishonest.
Preach, Pastor. Preach, Pastor.
The practice of faith must be according to the word of God.
Yes, sir.